Hi, everybody. Is this mic on? This one's on. Okay. Well, it's not doing anything.
There's no PA. You'll hear each other talking.
Okay, we'll hear each other talking.
Well, that's just for recording?
It's for recording. Good evening, everyone. Today is Thursday, April the 27th, and we are calling to order the City of Oregon City Budget Committee. And so welcome everybody that's here in person. I believe there's people behind. Sorry, I have my back to you. I'm really sorry. I can't see you. And people are behind me and people are over here. All of our wonderful staff. Thank you so much for being here. So we're going to do roll call, and then we'll do the commission first, correct?
I have it all mixed together.
You have it all mixed together, okay.
All of the budget committee.
All right. Well, let's just go around the table, and we'll start at this end with Mr. Gifford. So
Here.
thank you. Commissioner Smith will be coming in a little later. So introduce yourself.
Yep. Andy Smith.
Adam Marl. Casey Flesh. Kyle Arnhart. Mike Mitchell.
Lori Arenello.
Frank O'Donnell, Tony Kunkel.
And just no.
Thank you. All right. Before we get into item number 3, I just wanted to bring something to the Budget Committee's attention and the public as well. Is that many of you are aware that we have gone through basically phase 1 of our diversity, equity, and inclusion process. And we have our HR director, Patrick Foyles, has brought some copies, but I just wanted to make sure that people were aware that this will be the first process that we're going through since we worked on that, and we will be getting a presentation by the commission at our meeting next Wednesday. But we do need to keep in mind as we go through this process how this is going to affect the programming that we have scheduled for that, just because DEI does affect people in our community, and we need to look at things when we are with that lens while we're going through the next few processes. We were in the middle of it kind of when we were going through the comprehensive plan, the 2030 update, but we also were looking at that as part of our overall focus when we were doing the goals and how we set those out during that process. We hadn't adopted anything yet, but we were in the process. So those are available wherever Patrick is. He said he brought some copies. I wanted to give out to the committee members so that you would be aware of what we're doing with that. Is Patrick still in the other room?
He's right over here.
Do you have those? Yes, please. So we'll just take a minute and he'll hand those out.
So that vendor is scheduled for an appearance on
Yes.
May 3rd?
Yes.
And was that as someone's invitation, or how did that happen to occur?
Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, so that was one of the commission goals in the existing biennial budget. Yes, and so they've completed that work. So this is the presentation to the city commission of the final product.
And I believe that's also a budgetary item to the tune of $150,000, I think, which we'll discuss in this meeting, I think.
Sure,
Thanks.
sure. But we do have, but like I said, I just wanted to bring, so we have in the statement, we have our DEI commitment, and I will just read it just because not everybody has this handout. So it says, in Oregon City, we strive to be a place where all persons, regardless of race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, religion, or ability, we want them to feel safe, respected, and valued. We will work to ensure that all staff feel a sense of belonging to all city services and programs are equally available and accessible to everyone. We are committed to sustained improvement by doing the work necessary to achieve this goal. So it's just FYI, and the fact that we will be looking at some of these things as we go through our processes, whether it be the TSP, the budget, all the other programs that are coming up. So anyhow, so let's move.
Speak into your mic.
This is not an amplification system, as I understand it, correct?
No.
Could you come up in a minute, Jacob, and explain this because they're saying they can't hear anything?
Hi, so the mic system for today, in order to have better microphones in the room for the stream. We don't have the PA hooked up, otherwise it would create another feedback loop. So if you want, you can pull up your phone and listen to it online. Or we also have the transcription on the screen. You can read it that way. But the best might be pulling out your phone and listening to our YouTube stream.
So I apologize. We will try to endeavor to speak up so that you can hear, but it's not going through here. It's just going through us. So next on our agenda, we have, so we need to have chair, vice chair, and a secretary. And being the secretary doesn't mean you're going to sit here and take notes. But so do we have anybody that would be willing to act as the secretary of the budget committee? Would you like to do that? Sure. Is everybody, do we have to go through a formal process if somebody wants to do it? Just have them do it?
Yes. Just make a motion and vote.
Okay, so can we have a motion?
Move to appoint Mr. Gifford as secretary.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. All right.
No abstentions.
Abstentions? Any noes? Any abstentions? Okay. All right, so how about a vice chair?
I move to appoint Andy Smith.
Thanks. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded as we elect Andy Smith as the vice chair of the budget committee. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, raise your hand. All those abstaining, excuse me, raise your hand. All right, so next we have the chair. So do we have any nominations for chair? I would volunteer to do it since I'm already used to doing it, but if anybody else is dying to do it.
I nominate Mayor McGriff.
Second. All right, all those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? I actually should abstain, but that's all right. Okay. So next on our agenda, we have
It should be noted there were 2 abstentions.
Oh, 2 abstentions. All right. So on our agenda, we have the minutes from May 3rd, 2021, May 6th, 2021, and March 2023 budget training. Do we have any comments, corrections, additions, anything at all that might that we might need to do for amending these meeting notes?
There we go.
Wow. Oh, there's other people in the room.
I thought maybe we were just saving energy or something. And I thought that was weird.
Do we have a copy of the minutes? They're not in our packet. They were sent out, but they are not in our packets.
Yeah, I printed my own out, so.
Okay, so the minutes were only included in virtually, but sent us via email.
Correct.
Do we want to pause on the approval?
It's up to the committee. Did everybody take a look at them online?
Yeah.
I did.
Is there anybody that wants to delay these?
Motion to approve the minutes.
All 3 of them, or?
No, I don't know if we need, I thought we were just talking about the 21. All 3?
We can do them all at once.
Okay, yep, motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the, the meeting minutes of the budget committee and the budget training. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those not in favor? Are there any abstentions? We have an abstention. All right. So now we have item number 5 on the agenda, and that is going to be for public comments. Did we have people sign up? Do I have any slips? Okay. That's music, my voice. Okay. All right. Who is going to be, oh, there's the timer. Okay, I was gonna say, where's the timer? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and call up the folks who have asked to speak. That's the Parks Alliance Speakers Group. So group 1 is Kent Siegler and Doug Neely. That's the order I have here. Is that not correct, guys?
Jeremy come up to Kennedy or is not here.
Okay, well, he's on group 3.
Oh, well, you're still not happy.
Okay.
The reason I.
Okay, wait. Get sat down, get comfy first, please. That would be great.
I'm on the Oregon City Watershed Council. I'm on the board of the Oregon City Watershed Council.
And you are?
We have done many projects with the city.
And you are?
Doug Neely.
Thank you.
I'm a member of the Oregon City Watershed Council board. And we've done very many projects with the city on parks that actually have streams running through them in terms of invasive removal and in terms of plantings and so forth. The parks is woefully underfunded in terms of maintenance programs in general. We're glad that we've been able to provide that assistance, but we feel that we need to have in some mechanism or another, and I know all the departments have needs to increase the funding for both the parks maintenance and also the recreational component, but our greatest interest is in the parks maintenance component.
Hello, my name is Jerry Herman. I'm going to try to speak loudly here. I run a nonprofit called Rivers of Life Center. We also work a lot with parks. The reason we're here tonight, Oregon City Parks Alliance is a affiliation of business leaders, nonprofits, and others. I'm one nonprofit, Roger Fowler from the Parks Foundations and other. The Business Alliance Oregon City definitely supports this request that we're going to make to your group tonight. We provided you with a handout of 5 pages long. We spent the last 2 months doing research at the suggestion of some very qualified people in the city to determine how the funds are appropriated for parks. And what it really comes down to is when you look at the appropriation of dollars compared to the huge responsibility that parks has, this building, this facility, its operations as part of parks. We have the municipal cemetery, which is at least 50 acres of land that needs to be maintained, and all the responsibilities of dealing with people properly when they die. The legacy aspects up there are very important to the history of this city. We have, of course, a whole bunch of parks totaling 300 acres. That's a lot of acreage, okay? And on top of all that, we have a municipal pool, which is 60 years old, and so forth. So they have a $7.3 million budget, the Parks Department, per year, okay? We are here tonight to ask for the consideration of upping that amount by another $400,000 per year, a little over $400,000 per year, allow them to get 5 new people that would help in facilities management, help with the programming at the swimming pool, help with, of course, the maintenance and operations of this facility, but most importantly, as Doug said, Mayor Doug, was the maintenance of parks. It's a huge responsibility. When I get a call during the summer to try to help them with my youth groups in maintenance, that means to me that there needs to be more help coming their way. So there's 5 of us here tonight. There's 12 of us in existence. Kent Ziegler is fighting off the meltdown in California near Yosemite, where he has some relatives that are having to move out of a house, I guess. He's a part of the group too, president of the Business Alliance. So the reason we're here tonight is to tell you that we support parks. We know that a bond could happen sometime in the future, maybe. A utility fee increase, possibly. A parks district as an idea. But right now the need is to backfill for the responsibilities that they have, which are just huge. So we're here to advocate for that consideration from your budget. We're not sure where the money comes from. We were told there is $16 million in contingency. Don't ask me what that means, except that perhaps there's some other resources. But the request that they're asking, and we're supporting to make forward to you, is about $190,000, $490,000. It's in the packet I gave you, a little over $400,000 for 5 new people. I'm sorry, that's not the right number. I'm sorry, it's $190,000 for 5 new people that would help them on a 2-year basis. It would be about $400,000. So thank you for listening to us. Our next people are going to include members of the parks effort here, Tim Weist.
Well, I will call them, thank you.
Oh, you'll call? Okay.
Yes, sir.
That'd be wonderful. Tim
Thank-
Weist and,
Yes, thank you very much, Doug and Jerry. Do we have a 5-page packet? Because I don't have one. That's okay. I have a letter from Kent, but okay, so we have it now. Thank you.
It should be 5 pages.
Yeah.
Denise, can I clarify what the ask was? I heard 500,000 and then I think I'm 190.
I got 400K.
Their packet says 190 per year, which would be
500 for the.
Yeah, I don't have 400 something. All right.
is what's in their document.
I'm gonna turn around because I think Tim and Steve are behind me. Thank you so much.
I have to say, I would question that 190 figure.
Well, we can talk about it later. Yeah. We'll just go ahead and do the public testimony. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen. Since I did call you, but still just for the record, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Steve Williams. I'm here with Tim West. We're both longtime residents of Oregon City, and we are also members of the Oregon City Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. We're here this evening as well in support of Parks and Recreation Director Kendall's request for an additional, I had the number at 190,000 per year. Funding to support staff and critical facilities, operation, and parks maintenance. One of the things I want to say at this point is that I do recognize that funding for long-term program development and expansion is important. It's important to move forward with that. However, existing programs and facilities require adequate staffing and funding for proper operation and maintenance. To say it more directly, new facility and program expansion should only be a priority when existing programs are properly staffed and adequately maintained. Just a few examples, and Jerry mentioned a bit earlier, we've got the 50-year plus aging municipal swimming pool, heavily used and critical to our community. I don't think anyone generally around this table would probably disagree that the staffing levels and funding for this program is well below optimal needs. Jerry also mentioned the Oregon City parks of over 300 acres. Which includes the municipal cemetery, which must be supported throughout the year. All of this in the face of growing vandalism, frequent, severe, and unpredictable storm damage like the winter ice storm a couple years ago. I believe I was told that some work being accomplished in those areas is by 4 or less staff. Pretty amazing when you consider 300 acres of work. Not a realistic staffing level if you hope to effectively maintain our viable lands and facilities in the future. A recent master planning effort and community involvement process associated with Clackamas Park identified substantial deferred maintenance and facility improvement needs. These include things like the RV park, the boat ramp, and the other natural resource development opportunities associated with the Willamette and Clackamas rivers. All, if not most of these needs will likely stay in the deferred maintenance box, given current staffing levels. In closing, recent public survey efforts associated with Clackamas Park and the overall Oregon City Parks Master Planning process generated substantial public participation and an overwhelming show of support for existing Oregon City Parks and Recreation programs. Again, we are here asking for your support of the $190,000 a year funding request put forward by Director Reed. Failure to support this budget request could put at risk programs and facilities that the residents of Oregon City have clearly identified as very important to maintaining the livability of our city. I thank you for your time and all of your efforts.
Thank you, Steve. Tim, go right ahead.
I just want to thank you for our time here, or let you us speak and trying to do our issues that the parks are chronically underfunded. With the addition of 4 extra people, we'll take care of a lot of the backlog that is inherent right now in the system. We're over $20 million behind on park maintenance alone. And by funding these people, they'll be able to go ahead and catch up to this program. I think also that instead of relying on a cost recovery program where you're hitting users to go ahead and pay for extra work at the parks. This is something that by internally funding the Parks Department with more people, I think that what could happen is that we'll get better parks, better maintenance, and a park system that everybody could use at lower cost. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Let's give that Roger and Carla, come on up.
Good evening, Roger Fowler Tice from the Oregon City Parks Foundation. We've also, over the years, have worked in Waterboard Park, clearing 9 acres of ivy and well over 400 trees in our tree canopy. We believe our city parks are an important asset for our local businesses, tourism, and our community's health and well-being. Just as our many city departments need to have adequate manpower to properly accomplish their work, our city parks department also needs to have adequate manpower. We urge you to support the proposition the Oregon City Parks Alliance put forth for an increase in park funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Carla?
Carla Laws, Oregon City. I'm here as not only neighborhood chair, but as a parent and also as a planning commissioner in a sense. All these positions and different, parts of the community, even as a mom, I'm seeing a need for our parks. Number one, as a mother, I have a 7-year-old daughter that I can't get swimming lessons for, and I want her on swim team, and I can't do it, and it's impossible. Like, I tried to sign up this last spring. I was like, the same day at 12, I could not get into swimming lessons. And it was, my daughter's on the line of not being able to swim or doing any, I really want to get her on swim team. I can't do that. So I really see a need for our pools and staff to be able to support the community and needs, especially that we're growing so rapidly. The second thing was, as neighborhood chair and also as a planning commissioner, I'm seeing a lot of infill happen, especially in my neighborhood. What I'm seeing is that there's a huge strain on our parks. And with SDC fees on new builds, that covers new parks. That does not cover existing parks. And our existing parks are in great need. And like what we were hearing at the last work session, I mean, there are parents that would be willing to pay maybe towards parks, but the fact is the facilities are way out of date. We need to have this change. We need to upgrade. We need to be able to support infill and in the future, more communities coming in to our current parks as well. And I appreciate you listening and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's really appreciated. Okay, next, I'd like, excuse me. Yes.
Are we still on the parks? Are we allowing questions or comments?
We generally don't. We're taking all the comments in and then we can have discussion as we go through these items. I think for us we don't really have the answers at this point in time to be responding. So I think it would behoove us to take in the information. I'm taking notes. I think other people are taking some notes, and then we can come back and discuss it if that's okay with everybody. So we have a lot on our plate tonight, but we want to make sure we hear the public members that are here because they're taking their time out as well. So, Pam, come on up.
Would you mind reading the first petition you sent into it?
Well, you can both come up at the same time. So do I have 3 people speaking or I have 2 people?
Just 2 speaking. She's just here with me.
Okay.
That's one of my amazing students. All right. Good evening, Mayor McGriff, City Commissioners, and Budget Committee members. My name is Maureen Polero. I'm joined here tonight with one of my amazing 7th grade students, Athena Franks. I'm here tonight representing many hats. I'm the chair of Oregon City Together. I'm a parent, a homegrown Oregon City pioneer, and a 27-year veteran teacher in Oregon City, where I currently teach health in 7th grade. I'm here today to ask for your help. Our youth need your help. Our community needs your help. As an educator, I have seen the perception of harm around substances such as nicotine and marijuana decrease. The use of marijuana and vaping in schools is real and it's growing. Youth substance is not new, but that landscape has changed. Access is almost immediate. Social media has created a pathway to substances that is disturbing. Kids can send an emoji via Snapchat and have a time and place to buy drugs, alcohol, and or nicotine within minutes. Fentanyl is a monster that is rearing its ugly head and killing our young people. Just in the last month, we've had 2 major fentanyl busts in our town, one within blocks of Oregon City High School. Oregon City together needs your help. We know prevention works. The DFC Drug-Free Communities, the nation's largest prevention program, emphasizes the importance of local government being involved in preventing youth substance. Recently in February, I was at CADCA in DC, and I sat on several presentations where coalitions were supported financially by many parts of the community, from schools, law enforcement, and their local city government. Currently, we are the only organization in Oregon City that focuses solely on prevention and education of all of our Oregon City youth. We are working diligently to prevent youth substance abuse. We need your support financially to keep the work moving forward. Just today, I was on a Zoom with Songs for Charlie, a fentanyl awareness organization, to discuss Fentanyl Awareness Day, which is May 9th. They showed statistics around prevention and discussed how drug use and addiction can be prevented. But it takes everyone in a community to participate and work together. The efforts are also needed to have financial support to access resources. I've debated on what points to make tonight and decided to share the heart from my heart. I'm a parent whose own children are at risk as they are genetically predispositioned to addiction, and it scares me beyond measure. Thankfully, they are educated and have layers of protective factors that I have put into place. But we have too many youth in our community who do not have these protective factors. I'm an educator and a community member who cares deeply about our Oregon City kids. I do not want our youth to use substances. I see students using. It breaks my heart. I see those who are struggling with their mental and emotional health. I do everything I can as an educator to teach our students about coping skills and how to ask for help and how to get help, so they do not turn to use substances or risky behaviors to cope. I want the best for our youth in our community. I implore you to please consider allocating a portion of our marijuana tax revenue to prevent youth substance abuse in our community. Thank you.
Let's see if I keep thinking that's going to happen.
It's not.
I'm sorry.
I know, we're all trained that way now.
I'll just try to speak loud. My name is Pam Wilson, and I'm the coordinator of the Oregon City Together Coalition. And first, I want to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for the Youth Advisory Commission. Being involved in the community and knowing that you're part of the community can be a very effective protective factor for many teams. So for folks that advocate for you, thank you so much for doing that. And tonight we're here to offer the city another opportunity to support the youth in our community. And as Maureen said, we're asking you to consider the negative effects of marijuana legalization on our youth and to allocate a portion of the city's marijuana tax revenue towards preventing youth substance use. An allocation of $40,000 to $50,000 would help the coalition continue our critical prevention efforts as our 10-year drug-free community grant sunsets this fall. I know you have information in your packet, but we've had a competitive grant for 10 years. They don't allow them beyond 10 years. So as of October 1st, we're looking at $125,000 less in our small budget. And this investment can produce long-term savings and benefits for the city. Youth who use drugs are less likely to succeed in school and graduate, thus are less employable than others. Investing in prevention now will help ensure Oregon City employers have qualified employees in the future. However, youth who use drugs are much more likely than others to become addicted. 90% of the people dealing with drug disorders, 90% began using before they were age 18. And addiction, as you all know, can contribute to becoming homeless. Most research shows that about 1/3 of people who are homeless have problems with drugs, and approximately 2/3 of those people have lifetime histories of drug or alcohol use disorders. I know that your city's goal, number 4, is to adopt and implement a homeless strategy for Oregon City. And we feel that preventing addiction should be part of any effective strategy. And the funds would support evidence-based prevention. We used strategies endorsed by SAMHSA. Our work focuses on reducing risks and increasing protective factors. In our packet, you have our financial information. It shows that most of our money goes for education and training. For example, just in the last 2 months alone, we provided Inks, a movie on anxiety to all our schools, brought in a national brain expert just last week for parents and students alike, provide Brain Abouts, a program to our middle schoolers, and create a community work group to increase awareness of fentanyl. Accountability of our drugs is already in place. The school district is our fiscal agent. We submit an action plan to our federal agencies, and we have regular 6-month reports. And most of the sectors already of the community already sit around the OCT table. We welcome any of you to join us, and particularly we'd love to have your youth commission members join our coalition. And I'm open to any questions, but we can do that later. So I thank you for your time. I think it's really fast, but that clock was on. Thank you.
Linda Basinger. So the air conditioning is blowing my papers off the table here.
Linda Basinger, thank you for taking the time.
Just speak up, because remember, this is not amplification.
Okay, thank you for taking the time for hearing all of the tonight. It's very important that you're allowed to speak. I want to speak about park fees. Park fees are just about as popular as children. Children's sporting events should not be charged fees to play. It takes a city to raise takes a village to raise a child. These parks are going to be mowed whether we pay a fee or not. There's not a lot of money that's made from this for the park people, the people who, parents who pay for this. There's not just a lot of extra funds for paying coaches. When I was involved with this, the parents were involved with lining the fields and bringing out the nets and putting up the nets for soccer. I can know of 3 children today whose parents did not have the funds to put them in parks. And those 3 children that I just happen to be still in contact with are very good members of our community today. That was because the other parents took up and paid their fee, and they were able to do this. Gives kids something to do and something of honor to do as well. I did pay the park fee last year for my great-granddaughter's first birthday. And I'll let you know that I paid more for the park fee than I paid for the cake and everything else. The plates, the napkins, the streamers, the ridiculous fees to do that. She was 1 year old, maybe it wasn't a lot spent on that, but that was a ridiculous fee for someone to spend for that. And the neighborhood association should not be charged for parks either. I'm in the Kenema Neighborhood Park. Howard Clemson was a lifelong member of Kenema. He was born in Kenema. He died in Kenema. He was mayor of Oregon City at one point in his life. Howard Clemson is the one who got the grant for the shelter in Kenema. And now our neighborhood is being charged the fees for this. We have an ice cream social once a year, and we have a dessert dash. And the dessert dash barely covers the cost of the ice cream for those things. Should not be charged for that. So anyway, I would urge you to pass the park fees. You're never going the park budget. You're never going to get enough fees to pay for this. So thank you.
You haven't heard the latest. We made a request of the city. Neighborhood associations will not be charged to use shelters.
Yeah.
We did that a few weeks ago. So you will have to make a reservation for it, because just like everybody else, I just want you to know. So please pass the word that what you said was that's not true.
Howard Clemson got the grant.
Yes,
the idea that the Kenema Neighborhood Association would have their fees there. It got much smaller process, but that was what he wanted to do.
Thank you. So yes, so we're not doing that.
One down.
I'd like to call up the lovely and delightful Mr. Bob LaSalle.
This isn't all my explanation needed. And you embarrassed the heck out of me.
You're gonna have to talk fast to get that into 3 minutes.
Hello, Budget Committee members. My name is Bob LaSalle, and I'm the chair of the Citizens Involvement Committee. I'm pleased to report that the CIC has become quite successful. In 2020, when I was elected chair of the CIC, we had 7 active neighborhood associations. We now have 10 active associations, 1 and close to 11, and are working on the 12th. I feel pretty good about that. Now, Mr. Gifford can attest to what a job that is to get these activated. To give you an idea of the devotion of the neighborhood association volunteers, I've estimated 486 hours of volunteer time devoted to the neighborhood associations in the last year. Unfortunately, along with our success comes additional expenses. In 2008, our annual budget was $35,000, of which $10,000 went to the Trail News. That left us with $25,000 to be divided among the 12 neighborhood associations for notification of meetings and any other communications of importance. In 2022, our budget was $26,000, a whopping increase of $1,000 in 15 years. The CIC website states, concentrate on ways to encourage greater public involvement and communications between the city and its residents. It further states, citizen participation is goal 1 of the city's planning process. Oregon City Resolution number 20-16 states, the CIC has proven to be a successful means of communication between the city and the citizens. Now, why are we asking for more money? The lack of funding was not apparent when many of the neighborhood associations were inactive. If a neighborhood association came up short, we'd simply allow them to borrow from a neighborhood that was not active. So it didn't prove a problem. But with the current number of active and anticipated active neighborhood associations, that option is no longer available. Now, can you bring that up on the screen? I think you have a hard copy too of the present allocation. Yeah, that's it. Per neighborhood association, the deficit, if all neighborhood associations are active, and they ask for allocation per year. Now, if anybody's interested, I can give you details on how I arrived at those figures, as well as detailed figures for each neighborhood association. I wish I would have been able to hire a consultant to help me get that put together, because it was quite a challenge. As you can see, if all the neighborhood associations have been active, we'd be short $12,768. Now, we're only asking for an additional $22,963 per year to enable the neighborhood associations to remain active and communicate with their citizens. We're also asking for an additional $10,000 per year to be put in reserve to be used for miscellaneous expenses such as neighborhood association meeting signs, newsletters versus postcards, special neighborhood association activities such as ice cream socials, picnics, the National Night Out, which we always take part in, the safety fair, and so on. Now, I anticipate that much of that might never be used, which brings up a question I'd like to answer sometime with this. What happens to the unused CIC funds?
You mean unused?
Yeah, if we have any leftover funds at the end of the fiscal year, what happens to those funds? I know they don't carry over into the next year. So I don't expect an answer right now, but I would be interested in having that answer. So that concludes my presentation. I hope you'll look favorably upon our request to help the neighborhood associations remain active. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have later on. And by the way, on a personal note, I encourage your support of better funding for the Parks and Recreation. department. Thank you.
Yeah, we were just, so we were asking, so you're, are the numbers, yeah, is it 22,000 plus 10,000?
An additional.
Not the increase, what's the total that you're requesting?
Looks like it's
Is it the fifth?
32 is what I got.
48.
Yeah, 32,963.
Is it 32 per year for the biennium?
About $59,000
And that's annual?
annually. And that includes the current budget, the asked for increase in the budget, and the $10,000
So you're saying for the biennium, it's 59,000?
per year.
So you're asking for 118,000?
Yes. Right now we get.
That's including what's already being budgeted.
Yeah, we already get, what is it, 110,000, 112,000 per biennium.
That doesn't make sense.
That doesn't add up.
And 159,000,
Well, we got.
159K for every year during the 2-year period? I'm confused. Are you guys confused?
Yes.
Okay, we're all confused.
Let me get my pen out here. Maybe I can get you there.
Because the most recent explanation says he's only asking for 3,000 additional. That's not. We need to know the per year current and the additional ask and the total ask for per year. So Bob, how much are you currently getting per year?
We're getting $26,000 per year now.
Okay.
Is that correct, Mr.
Total
Zook?
across all neighborhood associations?
Yeah.
For all 12
Okay.
neighborhood associations. That amounts.
Well, that amount was not based on 12 neighborhood associations. That was
Yes, it is.
current biennium. We didn't have 12 neighborhood associations.
Well, it's based.
On the total number?
That 26,000 is supposed to be divided amongst 12 active neighborhood associations. As I said before, we are able to borrow, we have been able to borrow from the inactive neighborhood association budget because they're not spending anything. So we've been able to keep up with it. But now that we're becoming more successful,
Yeah, I think so.
we're going to quickly run out of money.
Bob, how much additional do you want per year? Either including or not?
$32,963.
Is that including the 10,000?
That
Yes,
includes
yes.
the 10,000.
So could you repeat that, Commissioner O'Donnell?
So currently he's getting $26,000 across the board, is my understanding.
26,000
per year.
So let's use, since we're on a 2-year thing, so that the total of that is 52.
52.
Okay.
He wants an additional, let's call it 33,000 per year. So he's actually asking for
66.
an additional 66, if I understand correctly.
Okay, good, because that was completely confusing, but that's okay.
We got a number.
We got a number, all right. Thank you so much. I think we've got it. Anybody have any questions? We all got that, so.
Well, I hope you got it.
Yeah, well.
I hope you got it to give me.
We don't own a 3D printer, so we'll take that under advisement. All right, Candace. Thank you, Bob. And you're still lovely and delightful, so go with it. Hi, Candace, thank you for coming.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mayor McGriff, City Commissioners, and Budget Committee members. My name is Candace Lincoln. I get to be the administrator of Oregon City School District's Community Education Department. I'm also here with my 3 sons in the back there, Eli, Justin, and Ari. They're 11, 12, and 13. Thank you, boys. That was a big ask right there.
Is there ice cream coming after? Is it Dairy Queen?
There is, and we're leaving right after I'm done here.
Deal, guys.
We're residents of Oregon City, and I'm also a member of the Oregon City Together Coalition. My whole career has been involved around working with children and their families. Caregivers and families have a variety of struggles, and the pandemic only amplified them. Our families are struggling to keep their children safe. The increased potency of drugs, cultural norming of drug use, availability of fentanyl, online access, social isolation, and lack of positive and affordable activities have all made raising children during this time so much more difficult. We're no longer just talking about keeping our kids from trying alcohol or drugs. We're talking about keeping them alive. The drugs they can access now can kill them. Oregon City Together plays a key role in increasing several important protective factors relating to thriving, healthy children and families, particularly for those raising middle schoolers. One strategy the coalition focuses on is education. The landscape around drugs has changed since we were children. There's so much more that caregivers need to know to keep their children safe. The coalition provides accurate information and training, increases awarenesses around early drug use and the most effective actions parents and caregivers can take to keep their children safe and off drugs. As we all know, prevention is the most economical route to healthy, thriving children. Just last week, Oregon City Together hosted 2 family nights and a family workshop with a national brain development expert to update parents on teen brain development and how to reduce their teens' high-risk behaviors. These are the kinds of opportunities that will go away if Oregon City Together cannot replace some of its funding from its federal grant that sunsets this fall. I believe most families would support Oregon City Together's proposal to allocate some of the city's marijuana tax revenue to prevention. It makes sense because legalized marijuana has not helped us keep our kids safe. It's done quite the opposite. It has normalized and reduced the perception of harm that it causes our children. It's a complex world and families need all the help that we can get. Thank you for considering Oregon City Together's proposal. Appreciate your time this evening. Yes.
Your previous presenter, are you asking for $40,000 to $50,000 per year or biennial?
Per year.
Per year. Okay, I just want to make sure we had that figure. Thank you.
Thank you.
And what was that, Mr. O'Donnell?
The previous presenter said $40,000 to $50,000 per year request. And they're talking about replacing some federal funds that sunset shortly, and I think that was over $100,000.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've had a grant for the last 10 years
Right.
that will sunset. And so these funds would allow us to continue on our work and show the partnership that we have with the city outside of the school district and other partners that we have.
And the request was to fund that from marijuana sale proceeds.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Off to ice cream.
All right.
Sorry, y'all.
All right, we'll be right behind you.
Okay.
Just bring it back. Bring a bunch of dilly bars.
I would like to go with her.
Yeah, well, yeah, I like a blizzard. So I just want to make a note while our city recorder is fixing that. So we did receive some written correspondence. I hope I'm going to pronounce his name correctly. David Deramolis. So just want to say for the record, we did get that.
Do you want to trade stands?
Got the stand. Oh, yeah.
Get out your Swiss Army knife. I think it works. So Heidi. And then David, you can come on up at the same time. Heidi first, David.
Hello, my name's Dr. Heidi Blackwell. I'm a parent and educator in Oregon City, and one of my volunteer roles is being part of the Oregon City Library Board, and specifically the liaison to the Teen Advisory Committee. Youth programming is a need in our community, and the budget request for the library will directly impact whether the teen section can stay staffed. Organizations like Oregon City Together have proven to be successful. We pay for these spaces and programs now, or we paying in different ways in the future. Today, I'm going to share a piece from Myrtle. They are 17 years old and both a student at Oregon City High School and a member of the library's Teen Advisory Committee. Our libraries are not only a vital point of access to information and books, but the very heart of our community. Libraries are a deeply important meeting space for each and every member of our community, from the very youngest of us to our community elders. For teenagers, there are unfortunately so few places to gather together in community with our peers. One of the most important spaces to me is the teen section of the library. A space to spend time reading in, researching, doing schoolwork, chatting with friends, and volunteering. The library is deeply important to so many of us, and to close, I'd like to share a poem that reflects my personality on that. Meeting a friend to finish an essay, pulling another source to cite from the shelves, while doodling the kids playing with their parents on the swings, outside the window. While leaving, I smile to the elderly couple reading at the table by the stairs together. Check out a book the library recommends, and curl up at the coffee shop across the street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Just remember, it's not amplification, it's just recording.
Right. Good evening. My name is David Goldberg. I'm the chair of the Oregon City Library. And one of our responsibilities by municipal code is to advise this body and the staff of the library on the budget. To do that, we asked for a 10-year review of the budget, and we found some striking problems. And I wanted to share those with you. You've got some written testimony, and I won't read the testimony. Beginning in fiscal year 2015, the general fund of the city contributed $389,700 to the library. This year, in this proposed budget, the number is $36,900. What's the consequence of that? Well, the consequence is interesting because people haven't perceived that anything has gotten bad at the library or that services have been reduced or the hours have been reduced. But what has happened is that 2/3 of the library staff now are unbenefited, part-time, on-call staff. Now, this means that our library senior management spend a majority of their time juggling schedules of up to 25 people to fill the roles that should be filled by full-time people. And they're doing this in order to keep people from working over the hours that would then qualify them for benefits. So they have ethical issues with this as well, as does the library board. 2/3 of our staff are unbenefited. And we find this is a big problem. This has been the hidden way that the defunding that we have seen over the last 10 years has had an impact. And this is not sustainable. The library's fund balance, which is now, by the end of the year, will be over $4 million, was generated due to an underestimation of the taxes that have been collected by Clackamas County based on the library district's formation. Some years it was as much as $350,000 underestimated. These monies are not one-time monies. These are ongoing. They were used for ongoing operational money. And we've put together a 10-year plan to be able to bring that down to a reasonable amount, working with city administration, with the finance director, in order to start shoring up the library, make it more sustainable and to shore up the budget until we get to the 10-year point when our debt service on the building has been fully funded. That brings me to the debt service. In the passage of the bond measure, the general obligation bond that the city residents passed, the city commented that the bond will not raise any taxes and that the city will fund the debt service from library revenues as well as other sources. Well, we haven't seen very much of the other sources, and the library's debt service, which is about $500,000 a year, is coming directly out of operational funds that are coming from the library district, which was not their intent to pay for capital expenses. This has been a legal issue that's been sorted out, but it's a moot point. It comes up all the time when all the libraries get together, wondering why only Oregon City and a little bit of Sandy is used to fund buildings, which is really not the intent. I want to thank our leadership for Greg Williams and Denise Butcher for putting together, I think, a sustainable, reasonable library budget for the next biennium. And I ask you to consider one other set of facts. We took a look at what the net city contribution to libraries are and the populations that are served by those libraries across the entire library district. You've got this sheet. I think you've got the sheet in your thing. It's astonishing. I didn't realize it was going to be as bad as it turns out to be. The number one library in the city is Lake Oswego, where they're spending $23.59 per capita out of net general fund to pay for the library. This goes down, as you can see, it goes down to Milwaukee, which is $4.40, Gladstone, $7.73. As of this year, this was done in fiscal 2021, the latest public information. Oregon City's was $1.70, and based on this budget, it would be 60 cents per capita to support the library. I mean, something is wrong with this picture, and I don't think that anybody has seen this in the context of a 10-year analysis. You have that now. We think this is outrageous, frankly, and as a library board, we recommend an increase in funding, and when we get to the library part of your discussion, either this meeting or your next meeting, we could get into as much detail and answer your questions as to, how this could be written. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much.
Real quick, just what would be your ask per citizen? Just to ballpark it?
About $350,000 per year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who came out tonight to talk to us and give us their information. We appreciate it. Shall we, was there anybody else that's behind me that didn't fill out a slip and wants to say something? Don't tell anybody, but I have told my son all these years that I do have eyes in the back of my head, but they're not working at the moment, so I'm gonna turn around. So, he's not watching this, by the way, on Zoom or that, so. All right, so let's look at item number 6, and let's review the city commission goals for 2023-2025, and I'd like to turn this over to our city manager.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before you get started, just let me say once again that we had an amazing goal-setting session. We had a very lovely and delightful citizen come and watch and make sure nobody got in any fights, which they didn't. It was very congenial, and I appreciate the staff and the commissioners for going through the process because it was very, very worthwhile. So thank you so much again.
All right, are you ready? All right. Welcome, Budget Committee members. I'm very excited to present to you the proposed 2023-2025 Biennial Budget for the City of Oregon City. First off, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for volunteering to be a part of this Budget Committee. The combination of City Commissioner and citizen representatives is important as we go through this process. The input is greatly appreciated, and I truly do look forward to working with you, as do my staff, over however long it takes us to get through this budget. Oregon budget law requires that I present the budget message prior to deliberation or discussion on the budget. I'm going to present the message in full and then present the individual funds budgets and ask for questions and comments as we go through each section. I'll try and keep this beginning presentation brief. The agenda is to go over the budget message first and then to present a brief summary of each fund for deliberation and discussion. Are there any questions before I begin? Great.
Are you jumping to number 7?
Oh, what did I do? Did I miss something?
Well, number 6 is the goals.
Oh, the goals?
So you had that up there for a second, and then it kind of went away. So that's setting the plate. When you do the budget message, this is setting the table, and then the budget message will set the plate.
The easiest thing to do
is to just open it.
Yeah, can you pop the goals up?
Page 1.
You can also turn to page 1 of your budget binder. So before you, up on the screen now and on page 1 of your budget book are the Oregon City Commission goals. It includes their Oregon City vision, which is to enhance and advance Oregon City's historic role as a regional leader. Its mission to build a dynamic community that leads the state in safety, economic opportunity, livability, and historic significance. The commission has identified 7 goals for the proposed biennium. These are still draft. They've not been approved by the commission. We did hold a retreat as well as brought this back to the commission during one of their meetings to discuss. The first goal identified is diversity, equity, and inclusion for a safe and inclusive community. Create a collaborative environment to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, resulting in a safe, inclusive community and organization. Goal number 2, infrastructure and city services. Invest in current and future capital needs for safe, sustainable infrastructure and city services. Goal 3, community engagement. Increase engagement efforts to bring more residents into the policy-making process, ensure all neighborhood associations are active with the Citizen Involvement Committee. Goal 4, homelessness. Enact homelessness plan and increase public knowledge of the plan and resources available for the homeless while reducing the visual and safety impacts of homelessness in the community. Tourism and economic development. Create and promote a tourism infrastructure that doesn't negatively impact neighborhoods and support economic development to promote a healthy, sustainable local economy. Number 6 is housing. Anticipate state mandates and tailor local policies to best fit the needs of the community while balancing public infrastructure investment for future and current residents. And goal 7 is the environment. Protect and preserve our environmental and natural resources for a healthy, sustainable community. Any questions concerning the goals of the commission, or if any commissioners would like to speak to any of those?
I look forward to us adopting them when we get there.
And when will that be?
Is that on our, it should be coming up on the next, isn't it on our next agenda?
I don't believe it's on our next agenda. I think part of it was working through the budget process as well while we're doing that to add, as we go through the budget, we've identified projects and funding that implement the goals. And so I think that's part of this, getting through this budget process, is identifying what projects are going to be funded that then will tie back into the goals that the commission has to bring forward for adoption.
I have some thoughts about those goals, but I'm not sure when
But let
to
me
express them.
ask just another quick question here. So what we did last time is we had goals, and then we had, underneath those, we had strategies, which basically related to the budget. The goals themselves are basically creating the framework, and then how we implement those is part of that budget process. So holding up adoption of the broad project is, I don't see why we would do that. It's what comes underneath them that we had debate and discussion and how we were going to get there. And that, I think that's the framework that we talked about at the budget, at the goal setting session on how we were going to sort of be looking at this. So, one more question?
The question was, when would it be an appropriate time to discuss some of these goals?
When we get to the goals, to the session when we're going to adopt them?
So at a city commission?
Yeah, we wouldn't be adopting them as part of the budget committee.
Understood.
Next. Okay.
Next. So that's number 6.
All right, I'll pick up where I left off. So the proposed budget is balanced as required by law, meaning resources equal requirements. The city's executive team prepared the budget with a focus on maintaining core services and achieving the city commission's goals. We were able to provide a few small enhancements to core services. Next, I'll go over the budget overview. There are 2 types of funding available to provide core service and accomplish commission goals and priorities: discretionary and dedicated. Discretionary revenues can be used for general purposes and are typically accounted for in the city's general fund. Dedicated funds make up the vast majority of the city's budget and include resources that are legally or contractually restricted for specific services. This table provides a breakdown of the allocation of discretionary and dedicated resources for the entire city budget. Approximately 78% of the budget is restricted based on legal or contractual obligations. The remaining discretionary resources are available to fund police, parks, and general governmental services. The total budget is balanced at $281.3 million with a tax rate of 4.409 per thousand of assessed value, the same rate as the previous two biennia. The tax rate remains well below the maximum allowed rate of $5.0571 per thousand. The lower tax rate saves the average homeowner about $160 annually based on an assessed value of $250,000 or $293 annually based on an assessed value of $450,000. Approximately 10 cents of the tax revenue based on the assessed value is approximately $360,000 in additional general fund, to give you some idea of what a dime would cover in new revenue. Oregon budget law requires us to include beginning and ending reserves in the budget. Actual budgeted revenues total $190.2 million, while expenditures total $209.8 million. The reason expenditures exceed revenues, as shown above, is because local governments typically have to accumulate funding over time to fund a large project. For example, the city accumulated water utility resources over several years to save up for the large inflow and infiltration projects. This slide shows where the money comes from across all funds, along with comparisons to previous years. Charges for services are the primary source of revenue for the city and fund the utilities, such as water, wastewater, stormwater, and the pavement maintenance fund. Property taxes are the next largest revenue source and primarily fund police, park service, and general government services. Other sources, examples of other sources include franchise fees and rights-of-ways charges, intergovernmental revenues, transfers, bond proceeds, and interest. This chart shows the allocation of the funds available. Oregon City is primarily a service delivery business, so personnel costs make up a large percentage of the budget, approximately 35%. There are 220.5 employee equivalents funded in the full budget. This represents an increase of 4.15 FTE over the existing biennium, which we've been able to accomplish within the existing resources. The budget allocates 30% of spending for capital facility projects and utility system improvements. This is consistent with the previous biennium because the large projects are continuing, such as the I&I program and the roadway reconstruction projects. Materials and services include contracts, operating materials, and utilities paid by the city, such as electric, gas. Transfers have declined slightly from the prior biennium as the city has wrapped up planned projects such as the Robert Lipke Public Safety Building and the Parks and Public Works Operations Complex. So here are the goals. The City Commission has identified the draft 2023-2025 Commission goals, which have been incorporated in the proposed budget. The goals include tasks that have been identified to implement the specific goals. Examples would be, in the proposed budget for goal number 1, the human resources budget is approximately $150,000 for diversity, equity, and inclusion programming. Goal 2, we include additional funding for information technology, $85,000 for parks planning, including the SDC study. Public Works funds includes capital projects totaling $55 million. The Transportation Fund includes $360,000 for sidewalk and bike lane safety infill projects. Goal number 3 within the City Commission budget is $60,000 over the biennium for neighborhood associations, an increase of $8,000 over the 2 years. Within the city manager's budget is the communications manager and the part-time community engagement specialist. The communications manager has been a position that we have had historically. The community engagement specialist was a 0.5 FTE added last year that we have fully incorporated into this 2-year budget. The general fund, we've also, for goal number 4, we have approximately $400,000 identified from ARPA funds that's yet to be spent. The police, we currently have utilized when marijuana was legalized and we were able to both tax locally, but then receive the state share. As that new revenue came in, we were able to hire and fund a homeless liaison officer with those funds, as well as a behavioral health specialist. So, I bring that up because those two positions were not created through a tax increase or an offset of revenues that currently existed. There was new revenue that came in that was then utilized to hire those two positions, which are approximately $741,000 over the 2-year.
And could you also explain how the state took back some of our?
We'll get into that. There was
took back some of the money, which is why we don't
I
have
think there was a
lot.
75% reduction in state revenues that we received.
Yeah, just make sure you say that loudly.
We also included in the parks budget $40,000 for homeless camp cleanup. And for goal number 5, for economic development, the total budget for ECDEV on programming is about $1.2 million, but that includes both the general fund component that goes into economic development, as well as the restricted funds that are associated from the transient room tax that we receive that is strictly used for tourism functions. So that's the total. That's not an entire general fund number associated with that economic development budget. Goal number 6 included $150,000 for expanding house choices and development of a housing strategy. So part of the discussion around this was that the legislature is putting forward several new mandates for local jurisdictions related to housing and housing types that local jurisdictions are going to need to incorporate into their municipal code. So really trying to identify funding to be available so that we can respond to whatever legislation we are expecting by June for that next 2-year biennium to be able to complete that work. In goal number 7 was really focusing on trying to identify funds for a tree canopy survey, and then the Public Works Fund. We're spending approximately $335,000 for requirements associated with the National Pollution Discharge Elimination Permit that we have, so compliance with MPS permit that the city is required to maintain. The $90,000 for the tree canopy, we have not been able to identify funding for that yet, but we have been able to maintain the funding for Friends of Trees. It's been a very successful program that we've utilized over the years. So just a definition, and a major fund is defined as any fund whose revenues or expenditures, excluding other financing sources and uses, constitutes more than 10% of the revenue or expenditures of the total budget. So for this biennial, the general fund, the water fund, and the wastewater fund would qualify as major funds before you. The general fund includes programs that are funded by property taxes and general revenues rather than specific dedicated revenue sources. Police and parks are the primary service areas, as well as economic development and departments that provide citywide support. Property tax revenues are projected at $32.9 million for the biennium. This reflects estimated increases of 3.7% in the assessed value of property for each of the 2 years. Departments across the board were asked to maintain the operating budgets at minimal increases over the previous biennial budget. Aside from personnel cost increases such as cost of living, medical and dental premiums, increases to the general fund include the proposal for an assistant city manager and, as stated earlier, the 0.5 FTE for the community engagement specialist, as well as the goals identified by the commission. One thing I want to mention is that we made a concerted effort to address the commission requests to fund the cost of positions using existing revenues. Over this biennium, our expenditures exceed our revenues slightly. We feel that the strength of beginning reserves provides us the opportunity to fund positions in the priorities of the commission while we continue to carefully monitor the expenditures and revenue assumptions over the next 2 years. Basically, what I'm saying is that we're including the positions in the budget and proposing no new taxes. The ending reserves. At the conclusion of the biennium, available revenues or contingency of $9.3 million. To ensure fiscal resiliency, the city's goal is to maintain an ending fund balance of at least 27% of annual operating expenses. The percentage consists of a stabilization reserve of expenses of 2 months, which is approximately 17%, which is recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association, and a 10% contingency recommended under Oregon budget law. These reserves are necessary to provide working capital for the beginning of the next budget cycle and to provide protection against unexpected changes in financial conditions should an extraordinary event occur, such as the loss of a major revenue source or the need to respond to a significant event. General fund reserves are particularly important to municipalities in Oregon because of limitations on the ability to increase taxes. Strong reserves also help to maintain the city's strong credit rating, significantly lowering the cost of borrowing. An additional $2.6 million has been reserved for future expenditures. This includes dedicated resources for the city's tourism program, from parks donations, and for community enhancement grants, which is a partnership from Metro. So really, what I'd like to point out, I talked a little bit about the 17%, so that's approximately $5.2 million. We were able to then identify the ending fund balance at about 1.6 million, which is about 5.4%. So we're about 4.6% short of our 27% goal for that ending reserve. Oregon Measure 110, the Drug Decriminalization and Addiction Treatment Initiative, was on the ballot in Oregon as an initiated state statute in November of 2020. It was approved. A yes vote supported making personal non-commercial possession of a controlled substance no more than a Class E felony with a maximum fine of $100, and establishing a drug addiction treatment and recovery program funded in part by the state's marijuana tax revenue and state prison savings. The yes vote resulted in a 75% reduction in the state shared revenue portion of the marijuana tax that the city receives. The proposed budget reflects a marijuana revenues of over $615,000 in each year of the biennium for a total of approximately 1.3 million. We anticipate the local share of revenues to comprise 1.1 million of the 1.2, while the state shared revenue portion will be reduced to $127,000 due to the impacts of Measure 110. These funds have historically been used to support the homeless liaison officer position and the mental health specialist position, and the remainder has been allocated towards parks capital deferred maintenance. The library continues to provide exceptional service to the residents of Oregon City while navigating the challenges of the pandemic. The library scored the highest rankings out of the departments on the community survey. The library fund is budgeted at $10.3 million for the biennium. District property taxes are projected at $5.5 million and comprise 54% of total resources. The remaining significant resources are a beginning fund balance of $4.2 million and transfers in $460,000 from the general fund. The city's general fund has contributed at least $300,000 each biennium for several years to support the expansion and will continue payments in the current budget to support debt service on the new facility. The fund accounts for all library operations. The budget for staffing and materials purchases is $6 million. Principal and interest payments on the new library bond are $830,800. The fund is left with $3.6 million in ending fund balance or contingency. The Community Development Department manages two funds, the Planning Fund and the Building Fund. The Planning Fund is budgeted at $4 million for the biennium. The primary revenues are charges for services, approximately $724,000 to customers, primarily for review of land use applications, and $667,000 for long-range planning services provided to the City Commission, the community, and other departments, including staffing for the Planning Commission, the Historic Review Board, and the Natural Resources Committee. Transfers in from the general fund are $672,000 to support the planning division and the services provided to the community. Pass-through revenues and expenditures total $1.2 million. The city collects the school excise taxes on behalf of the Oregon City School Districts and remits the funds to the districts for construction of school facilities. The planning budget is $2.8 million after subtracting pass-through payments. The professional and technical services budget will support expanding housing opportunities, including a housing strategy. The building fund total budget is $10.6 million. Licenses and permits revenues of $3.4 million are projected to fund operations for the biennium. Pass-through revenues of $600,000 include state surcharge and metro construction excise tax monies that are collected and remitted to those agencies. Operating costs are budgeted consistently with the prior biennium, and personal services include the addition of one plans examiner. The Transportation Division is responsible for the construction and maintenance of roadways, pathways, sidewalks, traffic signals, and guardrails. Street operations, which are funded by gas taxes, and pavement maintenance through the pavement maintenance utility fee are accounted for separately within the Transportation Fund. The Transportation Fund is financed by state gasoline taxes, which are anticipated at $6.1 million for the biennium, and in accordance with state law, are required to be spent on transportation system improvements, safety enhancements, and roadway maintenance. The budget for the next biennium includes $1.6 million for the Clackamas County registration fees. Transportation also collects revenues estimated at $6.2 million for the pavement maintenance utility. This revenue is restricted for use in accordance with the city's annual pavement maintenance plan. The total budget of $18.9 million includes $11.7 million for transportation operations and maintenance, $7.2 million for the citywide roadway reconstruction projects. Other important capital improvements include the design work for a roundabout at the intersection of Lynn, Leland, and Warner Milne, sidewalk and bike lane infill, and various pedestrian safety projects. Additionally, transfers of $300,000 will be made for future facility improvement needs, along with $700,000 for fleet replacement reserves. The Water Division maintains and distributes the city's potable water supply and protects public health by closely monitoring the distribution system and complying with all safe drinking water standards. Division activities are accounted for in the Water Fund. The fund is budgeted at $27.1 million for the biennium. Water utility charges are projected to be $17.6 million. Malala Avenue Transmission Main North is one of several major water projects budgeted. The city is currently working through the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, or WIFIA, loan process. If the loan application is successful, the city will move forward with a low-interest loan targeted at approximately 5%. Water rates are budgeted at current levels with inflationary increases of 3% in each year. The operating expenses are consistent with the prior biennium, including $4.3 million for purchases of treated water from South Fork Water Board, the partnership jointly owned by Oregon City and West Lynn. Additional funds are budgeted for engineering, patching and paving, leak detection, and emergency repairs. The Wastewater Division is responsible for the operation, maintenance, and improvement of the city's sanitary sewer collection system. Divisional activities are accounted for in the Wastewater Fund. It is projected to receive $15.4 million in utility revenue for the biennium. This includes inflation-only rate increases not to exceed 3% in each year. The fund is budgeted to collect $15 million in pass-through charges as well. Those funds are collected from customers for the Clackamas County Tri-City Sewer District. The current biennium includes funding $7.1 million for the city's infiltration and inflow, or I&I projects. The proposed biennium includes $21.1 million to complete many I&I renewal and replacement projects recommended in the master plan. The city entered into an intergovernmental agreement with Water Environmental Services to assist with the ongoing efforts to address I&I. And that IGA is expected to generate an additional $7.1 million.
Just for the record, explain I&I.
I&I, so inflow and infiltration into our wastewater system, so essentially rainwater, whether that's through downspouts that are cross-connected into the sanitary sewer system, or old sanitary sewer pipes that are cracked and allows groundwater to seep into those pipes. has a significant impact on the capacity of those pipes to transmit the wastewater, as well as to be treated at the treatment plant. So the I&I program is intended to replace those old pipes that exist to reduce that I&I, to then greatly improve the capacity available within the existing system, both within our current conveyance systems as well as at the treatment plant. The Stormwater Division is responsible for the operation, maintenance, and improvement of the city's systems of water, runoff conveyance, flood control, and pollution remediation and reduction. Activities are accounted for in the Stormwater Fund. It is budgeted to receive utility revenue of approximately $8.3 million. Public Works completed updates to the Stormwater Master Plan effective April of 2020 as required by the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. The plan is designed to meet new permit requirements for stormwater management and is critical to provide quality streams, river, and groundwater resources. Stormwater fees will increase by 8% annually between 2022 and 2027 for the purpose of funding necessary capital projects. Expenditures are for staffing with contracts to clean and maintain 23 drainage basins, 85 detention ponds, 4,500 catch basins, 25 miles of streams, and 26 underground detention tanks. The catch basins are cleaned annually, and the detention ponds will undergo scheduled maintenance 18 times each year. In addition, capital projects are budgeted for improvements at Rivercrest and Berkeley Hills pump stations, pipe replace projects for Scatter Canyon, and a few additional smaller projects. System development charges are collected on new development to fund future capacity increasing projects required to meet the demands of related growth. System development charges, or SDCs, fund projects in transportation, water, wastewater, stormwater, and parks, with each utility accounted for separately. Transportation Division SDC project funding includes $1.5 million for the construction of a Highway 213 westbound right turn lane. An additional $2.6 million is included for the completion of the Holcomb Bike Ped Safe Routes to School project. The Water Division SDCs are hoping to leverage a combination of ARPA and WIFIA funding, with $2.7 million in water SDC for several water system transmission improvement projects. Wastewater Division SDCs include a budget of $200,000 in expenditures to complete Myers Road Extension and some smaller projects. The Stormwater Division SDCs does not have any major qualified project budget in the biennium, but will maximize economies of scale and the concept of dig once in combination with the Holcomb Boulevard Bike Pedestrian Improvement Project. With limited funding to support stormwater system requirements, Public Works completed updates to the Stormwater Master Plan that will help determine future projects and funding. The SDC budget for the Parks and Recreation includes $300,000 for land purchases associated with a potential land purchase up in Park Place. In summary, the City Commission goals serve as the framework for this budget. I'm proud to present a budget that supports these goals, maintains the tax rate at the existing level and below the maximum allowed. I am confident that the city maintains a strong fiscal position, balancing the need of services and improvements with the ability to maintain those services over the long term. As part of the budget request process, departments prepared budgets with flat or inflationary increases in materials and service costs. We are seeing some rebounding from COVID, and inflation is predicted to slow somewhat over this biennium. The labor market remains tight due to a strong economy, and personal expenses reflect an increase of $8.1 million compared to the prior biennium. Oregon City still maintains a low ratio of employees to population, approximately 5.84 per thousand. So with this, I'll conclude the budget message. We'll now move on to the budget discussion by fund, unless there are questions before we begin. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the city manager, who is also our budget officer?
I do.
Please,
A
go
general
ahead.
question. So that's the overview of the city budget. And in the fulfillment of either goals or operational expenses, there'll be components that The budget process will examine the components that will allow us to fulfill those.
Correct.
And during the budget process, we may make adjustments in those or may increase or lessen our commitment to any one of the components in fulfillment of either goals or operational expenses.
Correct.
Is that correct? Yes. And then even after the budget is approved, I noticed that the city commissioner, when things come before us, specific operational choices, there's always a statement that says source of financing or budgetary impact. At that point, that's a second check on the expenditure where this, in some cases, and not all.
Yes, so
where the city commission can say, well, we allocated those monies in the budget, but we do or do not agree with that expenditure and that pursuit. Is that a correct summation?
And yes, it is. And why we bring certain contracts to the city commission for approval is because the Oregon City Municipal Charter limits the city manager's contract approval authority at $50,000. So if I have a contract for $60,000, it's in the budget, I still need to bring that to the city commission for approval.
Correct.
So that's when you see those.
So when I look at this, I mean, during the budgetary process I'll just use goals because they're the simplest. There's only 7 of them. We can review those as they're put forward in our plan and decide to pursue them to that extent at this point or not.
Correct, yes. Okay. So this was our team's, my recommendation based on the retreat, based on the existing revenues, where those revenues are coming from, how we could allocate them to be considered by the budget committee and then to be considered by the city commission.
The only other thing I said, I saw a reaction on goal 3, the general fund. It says city manager and $450,000 for communications manager and community engagements. Is that for those 2 positions?
Over 2 years.
Over 2 years, so $225,000 a year with benefits for
correct
our communication and a part-time. Okay.
Correct. So these numbers are all going to be 2-year numbers unless we specify a
That
one-year
also
project.
include incidental expenditures that come with that committee. For instance, the youth advisory committee.
That was just personnel costs.
Oh, that's just personnel. Okay.
So that'd be salary and benefit costs.
Correct. I think it was the behavioral health specialist and the homeless liaison officer. I think is one of the reaction
And
that
it
I
was
saw.
$741,000.
I mean, that was personnel and service. That was personnel as well.
That's the one that I kind of reacted to. So that's the cost of that.
Correct.
Those
Over 2 years.
2 positions over 2 years.
Correct.
And that is no longer being funded by the state.
No, I think what I was trying to show is we have the marijuana revenue comes in from the voters approved a local tax, so that's one funding source that comes in, and then the state also collects a tax that then gets sent back to the local jurisdictions. It's the state component that was with the passage of Measure 110, where they reduced the allocation back to the local governments by 75% to fund the programs proposed in 110. So so 2 funding sources come into that. Only one of them was reduced.
But that was the bigger of the 2, wasn't it? No.
No, it was the local taxes definitely a larger portion of that overall marijuana revenue.
But we were using that to fund that portion as well. As you said, there are 2 funding sources to fund those positions.
Correct.
And we got slammed on the state part.
Correct.
I guess my only observation would be as we peruse these expenses, specifically the $741,000, are we reacting to a regional problem and solely funding it ourselves, or should it be funded more regional? And I don't want us to be this old bearer of expenses for something that should be supported in a regional basis. And I don't know what to do about that.
We're taking care of our part of it, is the way I read it.
Could we when we get to the police budget, could we dive into that a little bit to talk about some of the other benefits of both of those positions locally? not only for homeless, but for staff in our community.
Right. And I'm fine with that. And maybe in a side conversation about what other communities have those same positions and why they do or do not.
William, yes. Anybody else I missed on this side? Okay, William.
Procedural clarification. This committee doesn't approve the budget. It proposes a budget. The city commission approves the budget. Furthermore, the city commission has the authority to change the budget. So what we're doing here is just giving general guidance of a proposed.
As a matter of clarification, the city manager, as the budget officer, prepares the proposed budget. The city budget committee approves the budget. The commission adopts the budget.
Approves the proposed budget.
As amended, if they so desire. Yeah. So there's a proposal, approval, and adoption.
Got it.
So
and there can be changes after that.
There can be changes throughout that process.
No, I mean, after the city commission has approved the final budget, as the biennium progresses, they have the opportunity to go in and
we can do budget amendments.
Right.
We can do budget amendments. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got one.
Go ahead.
One of the graphs you showed, and I don't remember where it is in the presentation, but it showed categories, expenditure categories, and the contingency and reserve total is way higher, 24, 25 compared to previous. Is that just because the top line revenue is so much larger and the percentages are still the same, or are we setting aside more in contingencies and reserve percentage-wise? It was pretty early on in your slides, Don.
Yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about. If I can get the slide to show back up, please.
It was bar chart. Yeah, that one. So if you look at the far right group of columns, the lavender or whatever in yellow is a big jump in dollars for 24, 25 compared to 22, 23. And my question is are those percentages roughly the same? Or are we setting aside a greater percentages of our money in reserves and contingency?
In the gray bar, which represents 2024, the percentage is higher than what it was per year in this current biennium. So we do see a bump in reserves. Some of that's carryover. Some of that is as we spend down these projects. For example, $5.6 million in ARPA money that we received and have yet to spend into additional water projects. Keep in mind as well, this is not just general fund, this is the entire city. So this is large funds such as the water fund, the wastewater fund, that have balances that will be going forward into capital projects in the first year and second year. So that's why it's dropping down.
Okay, I still need to understand it. The question was, is that growth on that 2024, was that influenced in any way by a percentage increase in what we decided to allocate for contingency?
So it's, yes, the amounts that are set aside at the end of that year are a larger percentage. I could look up the exact amount, but we target the end of the biennium as that 17% that Tony talked about, and the 10% for the contingency. So we really target the end of the biennium, knowing that within 2 years, there's flexibility on those two. It could very easily be the opposite way. But in our case, at the end of FY24, yes, the percentage of the ending fund balances is higher than our target. Not every fund has a hard target like the general fund does. It does get the most amount of scrutiny because it's also the most compressed generally. But keep in mind, there's also other utility funds that are included in these balances that generally have to have larger balances to fund projects over time in order to complete those, because we don't issue debt in order to do most of those projects. We cash fund our projects.
So what's interesting is that when I get to the next slide when I stopped, I'm focusing on the general fund reserves and contingency. And in my presentation, I was talking about wanting to hit a goal of 27%, and we're hitting 22. So in the general fund pot, we're a little bit short of our ideal goal. But yet you see these increases in reserves because of the ending fund balances because we don't typically go out for bonding for our capital improvement projects because they require voter approval. We tend to accumulate revenue in our wastewater fund, our stormwater fund, system development charges are all part of that total. So this is the total budget. So even though general fund pot, I'm going to show you, is a little short, our other reserves in our dedicated funds are growing as we save those funds for luck.
Because we spend them in big lumps.
Because Myers Road was $9 million. So there are large capital expenditures that happen that we have to save for.
Obviously, I look at that, and I look at the dollars that are involved, and think about some of the requests for additional funding that we've got. It just looks like a big piggy bank.
Right, and I think
that's probably dedicated funds.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say. Is you remember we have the dedicated funds and the discretionary.
Right.
And they're different.
Yeah. Get into it more deeply.
Yeah.
And if you were to look at, on page 17, it has the prior years, so 17 to 19 and 19 to 21. 17 to 19, the contingencies was 91 million. And then the other one was 81 million. And then, so just looking at last year's where the contingencies dropped down. So that's why if you were to have the other years included on this, it would look more level than what previously. It's just a big jump because there wasn't large contingencies last year, which I'm assuming is because projects were being paid from the reserves that we had.
So 20 million Lipke, public safety bill, right? So
yeah, so you need the more years to have a better, clear. This gives a better, clearer picture than the just 2 years worth of graphs year over year, or biennium over biennium.
As you go through this, though, and begin to look at fund by fund view, which has the levels of restriction that are required by law or by commission, that is when you begin to look at meaningful reserves or lack of reserves. So at this 40,000 foot level, it's a different story than when you get into the white grass.
Okay, thank you.
So are we going fund by fund at the next meeting?
No, I was going to start right now.
Well, not right now. We will. And so here's my question, and it's a more general question. So as I've gone through this, and I went back through, let me see if I can find it, because I just had my page marked, and I moved. So what I am trying to understand is we have a rate. It's under the section where we talked about property taxes. Sorry, I just had it when I moved my paper to look at something else.
4.409 per thousand.
Yeah. So that's okay. Here we go. Yeah. So we have page 23. It's right-hand column, second paragraph. So why can we not consider bumping that budgeted rate up a little bit, but still staying under the 5.0571 per thousand?
We can.
For what purpose though?
Well, that would be to be determined.
Yeah.
You said 10 cents would be $360,000.
$360,000 for 10 cents.
Yeah, and I didn't get all those numbers written in.
For 1 year. So we got 10 cents at 700.
So we've got.
That's the.
So
well, the maximum.
Can I just?
Yeah. So maximum we have is $5.0571 per whatever.
So I proposed a budget with the existing tax rate. A discussion concerning the permanent tax rate is completely appropriate for this budget committee to discuss. Okay. So the mayor is correct. Our current rate is 4.409 per thousand. Our maximum rate is, I'm going to say it's 5.0571. So that's approximately 65 cents, just under 65 cents of tax rate cap that we have available to the city. It's impressive. There are not very many cities in the state of Oregon that have not utilized all of their tax rate.
And we never really have.
So this is approximately 10 cents on a $500,000 house is approximately additional $50 per year. Okay.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Approximately a 10-cent tax increase on a $500,000 assessed home.
And you're just reading that from someplace else. That's not in here, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I was anticipating.
Right, you're anticipating, because I asked you about it before.
I'm done for the rest of the night.
Yeah, I asked you about that before, and so I said, please be prepared.
Is a $50. So if you took 500,000, divided it by 1,000, that'd be 50, or it'd be 500, multiply it by a dime, that'd be $50.
Just part of my recollection is that part of the reason we're under goes back to when we switched to classifier.
Oh, gosh. Wish Rocky was here.
Mr. Gifford, you probably remember that, because we were involved in those.
That was part of the selling point, that we were able to not tax at our full capacity.
Okay.
So, I'll just put a couple more out for your discussion. The remaining taxing authority is approximately just under 65 cents. If the full taxing authority was levied, that'd be approximately just over $2.3 million per year. At 0.6481 on a $500,000 home, that's an additional $324. Okay. The current tax rate at 4.409 for a $500,000 assessed home is $2,205. Now, this does not include community safety advancement fee, parks, pavement maintenance utility fee. We haven't gotten a parks maintenance fee. Or obviously any utilities paid, water, storm, sewer, that type of thing. So this is just a straight calculation of our tax rate on an assessed value divided by 1,000 times that tax rate.
Right, what would be on our property taxation.
Right.
Right. I'm not talking about the utility fees or any of that. I'm just talking about this number in here.
Can I ask, can we get a little what if or copy for our next meeting?
Certainly.
Of those scenarios?
Yeah.
I just think that it is something
what the impact could be on the tax bill
that we need to talk about. I mean, believe me, I'm not the math whiz here. I rely on Mr. Zook for the math wizardry and his staff. So let's just say, I just roughly added up, and we'll get this in the minutes, of all these requests. So I just did a rough. So I came up with somewhere between 566,000 to roughly 800,000. So that's the asks. So
can I just so
not getting into detail.
So back of the napkin.
Yes, back to the napkin. Let's just say
a full-time employee is $125,000 per year times 4, so that's $500,000. OC together 40,000, CIC 36,000, library 300.
66 for CIC. So
I'm sorry, I'm going to do 1 year. I'm doing 1 year. So that's the 350,000 for the library. That's 926,000 per year.
926,000
per year.
Like I said, my math wasn't great. That's why I said I had a range. I was taking different numbers in different places.
And I believe, was the fire district discussion part of the Blue Ribbon Task Force?
No.
No, that was different. Okay.
You mean back when we had the Blue Ribbon Task Force? Yeah. Well, we had our own fire district when we did that with Dallas.
Yes.
So that wouldn't have been a part of that. Okay, well, on that note, we've been asked for a break, so let's just take what time is it right now? Let's come back at 8 o'clock.
We're not wrapping up at 8 o'clock.
that's all right. People needed to get warmed up in the hallway. All right, so we're still talking about the budget message, and are there any other questions that are on the high level here that we can discuss?
I have one.
Yes, please.
I asked Mr. Zick via email if he could give us kind of the overall picture of how the library funding works, specifically, not individual line item details, but how the library district interacts with the Oregon City budget. I think it would be helpful for myself, probably others, if we just got a view of that.
You mean the budget, or you mean the fund allocation that the city contributes to the overall?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
so the district is here, Oregon City's here, how do those play?
We are part of the district. So we're here and the district is there, around us. Around us, yeah.
Yeah, so knowing that there's several experts in the room about what the library district
There are several
does.
experts in the room.
The library district it's an independent taxing district, and they have.
You might need to.
They have they established their own tax rate, quite a while ago, much like a fire district would. So I'm trying to draw the similarities and the differences between a fire district. We do have a
careful.
Anyways, so the city has its own tax rate, and we provide for the combine where the library funding from the tax rate, there's a co-mingling of those two. We own the building where the library is at, and then the operations is funded through the district. That's the when we get to the library fund, you'll see a line item that's the primary line share of all that funding for the library operations is from the library, tax and library district. So I guess that's how we do transfer money from the general fund into the library. They also the library operations is also dependent upon the city for overhead services. So obviously they're not completely self-contained. So finance, HR, IT, there's an IT component for the library district, but there's also a network that the library shares with the rest of the city. So obviously administration, recording, et cetera. So there is that commingling of services there as well.
But the funds that we receive from the library district, so that there's a separate library fund. So the money that we receive from the library district does not go into the general fund and then get allocated back to the library. It's almost like its own dedicated funding source for that library services. And then, as Matt was saying,
and that's for operations. That's to operate the library.
That's a component of it.
A component, okay.
Yes. And then, and then there is a component that the general fund contributes, and then there is a internal transfer back for those other services that are provided in order for that operation to run and exist.
Are there any legal amounts that we're obligated to contribute, or is it completely up to the city?
It's completely up to the city. Yes.
And I'm wondering if that 10-year fiscal report might be shared or published at some point for review?
I think when we get to the library fund, we can dive in. I think in the proposed budget, let's acknowledge.
Yes, Commissioner Smith is now part of the meeting.
Just appeared. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as part of this budget, I know that the library director worked with the library board to look at the 10 years of the reserves that have been built up, that have stayed in that fund. And we actually accelerated the dispersal of those funds to try to make some of the changes and address some of the concerns of the amount of use of part-time employees, but it's slow and it's incremental. So they're small steps, but there was an attempt to start to use up that ending fund balance, realizing that because it's its own district funding, kind of when I was talking about the 2 months operating costs for our general fund, that's really important because of when we receive our property taxes from the county relative to when we have to pay our employees and for our projects. The same applies to the library district. So a lot of work went into trying to identify how much cushion do we need to make sure we maintain in that ending fund balance for them to be able to pay their employees until we receive that payment from the county to cover those costs. The ratio is a little bit different, but I know Brooke can probably speak to this better than I can in terms of the specifics, but there was definitely a concerted effort to start utilizing those funds, and we actually, like I said, we're a little bit more aggressive than the 10-year. I think we burned through it in 6 years. It got us, but there's still a large number in there because of the operating costs that we need to be able to cover until we get the revenues from the county.
Yeah, but that's a 4-year deficit, that's still.
Yeah.
What did you say?
It's about a 4-year deficit still, that's something.
Did you want to add anything?
I think the only thing that I would like to add, and I guess we can talk about this more in the library fund, but just the things I'd like to remind folks of is that our library service area is not just the city of Oregon City. So when the library district was formed, every city who signed on basically got a service area that includes both city residents and unincorporated residents. And so for the city, we're kind of a unique department in that the service area, our service area has 61,000 people in it. 37,000 of those live within city limits. 24,000 live outside the city limits in unincorporated Clackamas County. They pay the same exact millage rate that's coming directly to the city to provide services to them. And if you look at the map of our service area, it's a very large service area. It's about 110 square miles. It extends almost right to the eastern city limit of Canby. And I can definitely provide the budget committee with the map. So that's one of the things that we always keep in mind is that we've got about 40% of our population live outside the city limits. The way the library district funding formula works is, there are different factors that go into how much is contributed by city residents and how much is contributed by unincorporated residents, but that's more detailed than we want to do right now.
I think it's safe to say we probably have one of the larger districts as well as a percentage of city and county within it compared to a Lake Oswego or a Milwaukee or a Gladstone, which are primarily their city limits.
Correct, yes. Of the libraries in Clackamas County, we have the largest service area population at 61,000. We're just a little higher than Happy Valley. There are a couple, like for example, Oak Lodge is all unincorporated residents, so their unincorporated percentage is higher than ours. But for the cities, ours is a very high percentage of unincorporated residents. And when you actually look statewide at service area populations of single branch systems, we're about 4th in the state of Oregon out of about 135 libraries. You get the 4th highest service area population served by one single branch.
And we were last on that list of per capita.
Is that
cost.
why we were so low? Is because our service area is so great? And are we truly funding at that level?
Was the per capita for city or for the whole district?
Which per capita?
The dollar.
It's for the district.
For the whole
It's
district.
61,000.
Oh, from David's testimony, yeah, that was the net, that was the city contribution. So that was the looking at cities who provide city general fund contribution, backing out the allocated charges, divided by their population. That was the per capita amount.
The population of the city or the whole
population
district?
of the service. I believe it was the service.
It says population served.
Okay, so so this is, I think, part of the discussion that would be great for the budget committee to have is that everyone in the district, city resident and county resident, pays into the library district, right? But then there's a component, then it's a city-owned facility. How much should the city put in to the benefit of the whole district when only 54% of it is paying for it, right? So there's an equity issue on payment for services, in my opinion. So that's what makes it hard when you compare it to a Lake Oswego, where it's all their own residents.
Yeah.
And, so, for every dollar they put in, it looked like $1 per capita. Every dollar we would put in gets cut in half, 45%, right? Because we're picking up a larger population that's not paying into the city's general fund to put back into the library.
Well, how much of the usage is city versus the service
Greg
area?
probably has that.
It's probably around, I would have to look at the stats. I want to say when we look at our monthly stats from the library board, it's about 60% city usage of circulation.
Circulation.
Whether that translates to number of people coming in, our people counters can't tell.
Tell me metric you got, I got it.
Right. So it's about 60-30.
He goes, oops, city, oop, nope.
Right, yeah. We wish, we asked if they had a model that could do that, but they said no.
Start tagging.
No, special little.
We also asked if they had the model that would help behavior, scan for behavior problems. But they said no, that technology.
It was in that Tom Cruise movie that they were projecting that. So, any other higher level? Yes.
I just wanted to comment on
Yeah.
something Mr. Koppel said. Thank you for that explanation about Lake Oswego versus us. I was trying to come up with a way to think about that, but it's apples and oranges. You can't say that we should spend the same as Lake Oswego. It's two different things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Every one of these is different. Yes. Yeah. Every jurisdiction does it differently.
Any other higher level? Yeah, something else?
Well, to summarize, unique to our city is what we want to do, what we need to do, and any choice to do one is going to have consequence of the other. So that's one principle I think I want to make sure that the Budget Committee understands, and the public understands as you go through this process. There is not a infinite pie. There's a pie. If one slice of the pie gets bigger, one slice will get smaller unless the pie gets bigger through either additional funding or it gets smaller through defunding. So I think that's an important concept as you go through this process, that individually every angle you look at should or could get better, bigger. And there's not a right answer, but whatever choices are made have a subsequent consequence as well. I'm not saying that you can't tap into reserves. You can always decide on what kind of reserve level you want, but those are targets that are there for a purpose. So as you go through this and hear from the different advocates or different people, just keep in mind, I'd love to at some point, maybe the next meeting, show you a slice of the general fund pie, so that that's an easy way to think of as you move to expand one piece of pie, another pie gets smaller.
So what kind of pie do you want me to make?
I prefer cherry.
A money pie. Yeah, that's not one of my favorites though. Well, this is why I asked the question about page 23. Because to me, it hasn't, I don't know if 4.409 is the answer. It is one answer, but what if it went up by 5 cents? Or what if it went up by 3 cents? I understand that many of us are risk averse and we're conservative. I consider myself very fiscally conservative, but I also think that we need to think about the expectations, particularly as we go through each department, of what our community is expecting a lot, not fully understanding the pie that Mr. Zook is referring to. And everything that we get asked about is, well, don't I pay for that in my taxes? Don't I pay for my... Well, the answer is, it depends on what it is. So I think that's just something we need to keep in mind. So any other high level, yes?
I might, because of the breadth of topics we have to investigate, I might suggest that we put together some sort of schedule for topics so we can advocate equal time to each.
Yeah.
I think that might be prudent.
Or appropriate time for each, because not all of them need that much time.
Right.
Yeah, appropriate time, like the ones that might have bigger discussions.
I think we're probably going to have a bigger discussion about the general fund. We will probably be having a big discussion about parks and library. I would say probably less so for the water, the infrastructure ones, because a lot of that is dedicated funds. They're not discretionary funds, they're dedicated. We have so much that has to go with this. And as I suggested to Mr. Lewis the other day, that we could save a lot of money and not have to deal with so much diversion if we just keep making big potholes and leaving even though you've got the new drone to tell us where the potholes are. It was suggested at the League of Oregon Cities meeting that we look at possibly keeping potholes as a diversion tactic to keep people from driving fast on our streets. I said,
free speed bumps.
Yeah, and I said, okay, I said, nothing's off the table. I said, the tolling group is looking at lots of things. I'm serious. People are coming up with what they feel are serious alternatives. And so I don't want to dismiss it by saying, oh, that sounds really dumb. But, so I'm just saying these are things some of the people are talking about. So, yes.
One option that I've dealt with in situations like this is take the items that we think are going to be pretty not a ton of discussion, like water, stormwater.
Deal with those
first.
Yep.
Yeah, and leave ourselves maximum time
for the others
that we know are going to take.
Does that sound?
I think that sounds
like something you'd like to do?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll ask staff to pick those items, and we can take those first. He's laughing. He's got a plan and a program. He's going, you're messing up my plan here. You're messing up my plan. I have a process here.
I just think it allows us to be able to give the right amount of time to the things that we know are going to be very just a lot of.
Well, I would say there will involve more discussion than others.
And perhaps the funds that we might have the most flexibility in. So if we're kind of locked in, then we're not locked in.
Agreed. Pleasure of the commission.
That's what they're saying. Okay, so the other thing that was requested of me on our break is that this would be a good, clean break at this point, to come back at our next meeting fresh and take whichever those low-hanging fruit items are and deal with those. And it's been requested by at least half of this group that we adjourn. So I'm just listening to what you all are telling me.
Do you need a motion?
We do.
Are you at a spot where the next second we starting to go into the individual funds? Okay.
Yep. I motioned, he seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn until, yes. Wait, I'm not calling for the vote yet.
Do we identify that as a recess till next meeting?
Yes, we're recessing until our next.
Oh, yeah, sorry, motion to recess until May, whatever the next meeting is, 2nd.
Are we meeting again on the 4th? Yes, May 4th.
I'm sorry we picked the dates so well. Tonight's the NFL draft. Next week is May 4th.
So everyone come in a Star Wars related outfit, because you will be judged. There will be prizes.
Day to budget. May the 4th be with you.
Yes,
So I think we have a request, a motion, and a second.
Yes, we do.
Recess this meeting until May 4th.
Yes.
Thank you for making it
Call
so
the
better.
question.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign.
May I recognize that Frank is no longer here?
Yes. And all those who are abstaining. All right. We're done. Thank you, everybody.
They just try to do that. It's clear enough.
Yes.
We don't need to be having.
You basically say, I move.